Political debates can get heated, but no one expected the clash that unfolded on a recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. Known for his biting commentary and unapologetic views, Maher found himself in the middle of a fiery exchange with a guest who dared to voice concern for Palestinians. What started as a panel discussion on the ongoing conflict in the Middle East quickly spiraled into a tense showdown, with Maher delivering one of his most shocking rants yet. And now, the Kulinski show is here to break it all down, diving deep into the implications of this intense confrontation and what it reveals about the current political climate. The setup was typical of Maher's show, a mix of pundits, experts, and celebrities sitting around the table, discussing the news of the day. But when the conversation turned toward the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, things took a sharp turn. One of the guests, a journalist known for their humanitarian work, began to express deep concern for the plight of Palestinians, specifically the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of escalating violence. Before the guest could even finish, Maher cut them off. What came next stunned not just the panel, but the audience watching at home. Maher, visibly agitated, launched into a tirade. He dismissed the guests' concerns, labeling them as misguided and one-sided. His voice grew louder as he accused them of ignoring the real threats in the region. "You care more about Palestinians than the people defending themselves from terrorism," Maher snapped, his words dripping with disdain. The guest, trying to explain the humanitarian perspective, was met with more hostility. What followed was a verbal beatdown that left the room tense. Maher's harsh criticism wasn't just directed at the guest, it felt like an indictment of anyone who dared to question his pro-Israel stance. His frustration was palpable, and it was clear that this wasn't just about the guest's comments. Maher was lashing out at a growing sentiment in the media that has started to challenge the status quo when it comes to U.S. policy in the Middle East. The guest, though shaken, continued to stand their ground, pleading for the need to recognize the humanity of all people in the conflict, including the Palestinian children who were suffering. But Maher wasn't having it. His response: "You're defending the wrong people." This is where the Kulinski show comes into play. In his latest episode, Kyle takes viewers through the explosive exchange with a level of analysis that only he can provide. As he replays the key moments from the confrontation, he doesn't just focus on Maher's words, he digs into the broader implications. Why was Maher so quick to shut down a conversation about Palestinian suffering? Kulinski argues that this wasn't just about disagreement on policy, it was about control of the narrative. Maher, who has long positioned himself as a defender of free speech and open debate, was suddenly the one doing the silencing. And for what? Because the conversation dared to veer into uncomfortable territory. Kyle points out that this isn't the first time Maher has reacted this way, and he asks a critical question: is Maher's aggressive defense of Israel more about his personal biases than the facts on the ground? And more importantly, what does it say about the state of political discourse when even the suggestion of empathy for Palestinians is met with such hostility? As Kyle peels back the layers of this fiery exchange, viewers are left with more questions than answers. Was the guest simply trying to humanize the victims of the conflict, or were they walking into a political minefield that Maher was determined to control? And why did Maher, a man who prides himself on tackling controversial issues head-on, react with such visceral anger? Kyle doesn't give easy answers, but he raises a point that leaves the audience thinking. Maybe Maher's outburst isn't just about this one debate, it's about the growing tension in American politics surrounding Israel and Palestine. More and more voices are starting to challenge the established narrative, and Maher's reaction could be a sign that the tide is turning. As the episode concludes, Kyle leaves viewers with one final thought: this conversation is far from over. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains one of the most polarizing issues in global politics, and moments like this only fuel the debate. But now, more than ever, people are paying attention to who gets silenced and why. So, what will Maher's next move be? Will he double down on his stance, or will he face backlash for shutting down such an important conversation? And what about the guest? Will their message resonate, or be lost in the noise? One thing is clear: the conversation has only just begun, and the next chapter is going to be one to watch closely.